When you say honesty, honesty. When you say honesty, honesty.
Honesty. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good afternoon. And welcome to Reason with Rattigan. Your host, the rebel, Will Rattigan on Reggae Global Radio. Big up to Jaheen Smith, first time listener. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Family, thanks for watching and or listening to the program. And remember to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel. Sounds possessive, right? My YouTube channel. I have to get used to that. But you'll hear it from me throughout the program. Like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. This afternoon, I have one guest, and he's none other than Mr. Andre Stevens. He needs no introduction, as he has taken social media by storm with his insightful and analytical assessment of the Jamaican political and social landscape. His broadcasts, we're getting a feedback. Jeffrey, have you...
I think Andre need to mute his mic.
Okay. Andre, if you're listening, could you please mute your mic? We're getting a feedback over here. Yes, Mr. Andre Stevens' broadcasts are watched by thousands, even until the wee hours of the morning. He's dynamic, experienced, knowledgeable, courageous, and a major, major force in educating us about the activities of the government and opposition party. If you'd like to join the discussion via telephone, please remember that calls will only be accepted during two periods, from 4:30 to 4:45, and that's New York time. That translates to 3:30, 3:45 Jamaica time, and 9:30, 9:45 UK time. And the second period is at 5:30 to 5:45 New York time, 4:30 to 4:45 Jamaica time, and 10:30 to 10:45 UK time. Please, 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 don't forget to tune into Reggae Global Radio, this station, tonight at midnight until 2 a.m. and relax with the rebel. Tonight, I'll feature some serious, serious slow jams. So you and your significant other or others should make the necessary preparations and tune in. Continued prayers and blessings from Mama Eileen and Papa Trevor. Ma P and family, big up yourself. Bonnie, Sassidi, thanks for tuning in today, and Mrs. Nelson. As always, big shout out to the Reggae Global family. By the way, this Reggae Global family is an entertainment force to contend with, as in addition to promoting, producing, writing, etc., almost all of us have recorded. Joanna Marie and Ed, thanks for the opportunity, as I will be next before Melly, or after Melly and Kevin. Now, let me turn your attention to the 1976 Meadowbrook Yearbook, where it is written, the 1976 Meadowbrook Yearbook, it is written under my picture. And I quote, Wilfred Rattigan, alias Ratty, the other member of the Dynamic Dodo. They're out of my best friend in high school, Herbert McDonald. I don't know if he's watching. Hope he is. But they call us a Dynamic Dodo. I won't explain that part. But it says, apart from being a self-appointed Hemlock, assignment being to investigate where Meadowbrook's finances go. A long time you ask for money going up, people. Long time. I just last year or year before. Long time. Goes on to say, Ratty, on rejection from the Meadowbrook choir, formed his own choir, members being Ratty, and Ratty. Ambition to leave Meadowbrook, destiny to succeed. It's all true. By the way, end of quote. It's all true or coming true. I was rejected by the choir mistress, but interestingly, not a single choir member, to best of my knowledge, has recorded a song for worldwide distribution. And here I stand on the cusp of doing just that. That's life, family. That's life. Big up the Meadowbrook crew, Donna, Herbie, Bobby, Glennice, etc. Big up the Firehouse crew, Mr. Guntley, my next door neighbor, who's about 98 years old and still going strong. Big up Eri, Wani, Pancho, Richardo, Lakaleka, Pulo, Tigo, me know you listen, Tigo, Barry, me know you listen to, Sparky, Danny English, etc. Big up the Rollington crew, Donovan and the Admiral, stay so, don't go nowhere. And last, but certainly not least, the crew of hardworking, dedicated, honest members of the JCF and JDF who are desperately trying to keep Jamaica safe and secure. It's come to my attention that the JCF is putting on an exposition. I think it's this week. But we know that glitz and technology cannot fight crime without the human element, and that is you, JCF and JDF. The investment should be in you, particularly the JCF, with better wages and support. I'll refrain from calling the police commissioner, the minister and Minister of National Security, and the Prime Minister. I'll refrain from calling them inept, ignorant, and arrogant failures, despite the failure to tame the crime monster and bring peace and security to Jamaica. Nobody can say me call them that, because I just said I'm not going to call them that. But that's a discussion for another day. It's been an interesting week, ladies and gentlemen, family members. Every week is an interesting week in content-rich Jamaica. There's a small group in the diaspora that is working on a serious matter regarding the Prime Minister, which should result in legal action within the coming weeks. Stay tuned. Wink, wink. This morning, I got a call from someone in the Prime Minister's circle. And the news that was conveyed to me was that the Prime Minister is very upset at me and proceeded to use all kinds of expletives attached to my name. I'm going to take the high road. I'm going to say I don't believe anything that person said, because I don't believe the Prime Minister would ever do something like that. No, he's a religious man. He's an honorable man. And I think he's a caring man. And I don't think he would say anything like that. So I won't even repeat what was said, except to let you know that it sounds like he's watching, or his surrogates are watching, because one of them called me this morning. Regarding the fertilizer matter, and most of you hear me talk about this fertilizer business, or has been talking about it for a while. I have been given the understanding that the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, and RADA, I think that's Rural Agricultural Development Association, something like that, but it's an agency within the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, that they're working feverishly to provide their response, or their responses to my inquiries. Stay tuned. Regarding Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith, the Integrity Commission and the Tax Administration are working to provide their responses and conduct whatever investigation they deem necessary and lawful in the interest of justice. I trust that their jobs will be conducted without fear, favor, or friendship. As always, I give thanks and praise to the Almighty for His continued blessings and mercy. To Mama, Daddy, the Whitfield and Firehouse communities, teachers, family and friends, for the support and sacrifices you made to make me the person I am today. I am eternally grateful. I give recognition because of the importance of school and learning. It is important to read, and equally important to understand what you've read. I say all of that for this reason. Recently I requested information from the tax administrator regarding Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith. And the ministry came back and said, nope, can't give you that information because of two things. One is the Access to Information Act of 2002, where it says you cannot unreasonably disclose information of a private person or a government official. And number two, they talk about 17H of the Revenue Administration Act, and says, based on that, you can't give out people's private information. Well, I'm sure my mother and my father are proud of me. As I hope every day that I do things that will make them feel that way, wherever they are. The information that was provided to me, I decided to just read. And that's why I'm talking about the importance of school and learning and why we need to invest in our children. I went back and I read this statute. Remember, one statute is for the, one statute came from the, where is it? Revenue Administration Act, the tax people. They're quoting me their act. And they also quoted me the Access to Information Act. Now, the Access to Information Act, just because somebody says to you that it's unreasonable disclosure, that is not dispositive of the issue. It doesn't mean the issue is dead. Because if there's a public interest, as there is in this case, it will override the idea, the principle that you cannot give out people's private information. And in this case, we know that there's a great interest in knowing whether the minister was transparent and accountable and paid her fair and statutory share of taxes. That is reasonable and within the boundaries of the law. So that statute that they quoted to me is inapplicable. The second one that came from the taxing administration itself, that statute refers to information being shared between divisions of the tax administration. It has nothing to do, zero to do with a private citizen asking for information. But keep in mind, this came from the tax administration itself. Think about how many people that they have given this kind of information to, and people just walked away saying, you know what, no way, I can't get that information. People didn't read. And I'm urging all of you, my fellow Jamaicans, whenever you get something from the government saying that, especially if it says you cannot do something, and they quote chapter and verse of an administrative act, administrative regulation or a statute, go and read it for yourself. Don't accept it as gospel. Because we're all people. We all make mistakes. Sometimes the mistakes are intentional. I'm not saying, well, it's a mistake, this case, but I'm not saying it was intentional. I'm just saying it was provided to me. And I read the statute, and so I sent it back to them. And this time what I said to them was, look, I'm not even asking for a document. If you're worried about a document, big up yourself, Carolyn. Sasadeva. I said, look, I'm not even asking for a document. All I need is for you to tell me, yes or no, did the minister account for this gift and paid the applicable taxes? So it puts them now in a quandary, because I'm not asking them to take the minister's tax documents and hand them over to me. I'm saying all you have to do, just tell me if she complied. That's all. And by the way, the law and the two laws you mentioned to me, they're inapplicable. So this person is I won't even call her name. She's the Access to Information Officer. She's been trained to do this. She wrote me back and she said, your response is duly noted and I will forward this request to the appropriate unit for further advice. Now, this is a person who has been trained, who's supposed to know it all and is supposed to give it to you. But she's in a quandary. I fully understand, because she's probably never seen something like this where somebody's saying, look, the two laws you quoted to me, they're inapplicable, and I'm not asking for documents, I'm asking for an answer. So we will wait to see what will happen. As a result of this and some other things, what we're planning to do is, starting next week, and I'm going to talk to Mr. Cox. He's assigned to the Prime Minister's office. He's the overseer of the Access to Information program. I'm going to ask him to have someone come on this program so that we can explain to the Jamaican public what's the intent of the Access to Information statute? How do you go about obtaining information using the statute, the type of information that you can get from the statute as a result of submitting it, as well as the type of information that you will not be able to get. Basically, a primer. We don't want to do a whole course on this. Just a primer so that you, my people, my family members, you will know that you can do this for yourself. You can task the government to provide you with relevant information about things that the government is doing. You can do it. So we're going to have a primer on that. And then in the coming weeks, we're going to have a primer on a whole range of subjects. You know, for example, what do you do when you're stopped by the police? What are your rights under the Constitution and the Penal Code and so on and so forth? What are your rights? We'll talk about, you know, how do you go about getting child support? Well, you know, we'll talk about immigration matters. That's a big topic these days. We'll talk about that. But we're going to have a segment of on this program where we can talk to you about things that affect you, things that you're interested in. But we're going to start next week with the Access to Information Statute. Other news. Those who have said and would say, why are you making such a fuss over Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith? And I've heard it. Well, in the fullness of time, other government officials will become the subjects of our legal attention. Stay tuned for that. So it's not just this minister. Now, if you think that Jamaican governments past and present have not committed any violation of the Constitution, the laws of Jamaica, or administrative regulations, if you think that Jamaican governments past and present have been completely accountable, transparent, and honest, if you think that politicians are without blemish and false, and above and beyond reproach, if you have read the last page of my filing, that's in court, which is the response from the Ministry of Finance, from the Jamaican government, essentially stating that the Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith, did not comply with the law or regulation regarding her receipt of a gift of services valued at $99,000. And if you believe that the letter I just talked about is a bogus letter, then you're right. You're right. I should not be fussing about this. It's much ado about nothing. And I have made a fuss unnecessarily. In fact, I should be arrested, charged, and convicted for using a bogus document to the detriment of the good minister. However, if you believe something should be done about the behavior of politicians and government officials, then in good conscience and for the benefit of the Jamaican people at home and abroad, you will support the fuss I'm making. We hold and cherish the belief that politicians are accountable to the people only on election day. I submit that to you, family members, that most of us think that, well, they're accountable on election day because that's when we get to vote to either keep them in or kick them out. That means that they are only accountable, politicians, every 5 years or almost every 5 years. However, that is simply not the case. Politicians are accountable to the people via the court system every day of the week, except Saturdays, Sundays, and public holidays. And that is why lawsuits are significant and useful and should be used to hold the government accountable. The journey of 1,000 miles to hold politicians accountable starts with one step. The first step. This is my first step, the lawsuit I filed. That's my first step. And I urge you, all of you, to join me on this journey. Please. Another subject. My Northeast representative of the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council committed to be on our program today and asked, when the commitment was made, asked to review episodes of Reason with Rattigan in anticipation of the interview. However, a few days later, the interview was canceled because she was quote unquote, advised by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade to wait for the completion of, quote unquote, the onboarding and transition process. I don't know what that means because the diaspora elections were held, I believe, in February of this year, and all representatives, not some, all representatives have been appointed. In any event, it has come to my attention that she conducted at least one interview before my request. And she's scheduled to be interviewed on mainstream. One second, please. She's scheduled to be interviewed on mainstream radio this weekend. So the question is, what happened to the onboarding and transition process? Is it only for me? I'm hoping it's not. Because if it is, this representative is going to have a serious, serious challenge. I'm hoping it's not. In fact, I'm hoping that what she's telling me about onboarding and transition process, I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm sincerely hoping that's not the case. Because if it is, Madam Representative, it's going to be a very trying period for you. Because at the end of the day, you represent us in the Northeast, you don't represent the Jamaican government. You are our emissary to the Jamaican government. And by the way, I hope you filled out the foreign agents registration form. Next topic. I've been assured that work on establishing the One Jamaica Legal Defense Foundation will begin within a few days. So please, folks, Nadine, big up yourself, big up yourself. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Please, folks, hold on to your contributions. Don't make the money burn a hole now in the pocket. Hold on to your contributions until further notice. I will meet with the gentleman next week. I think it's Wednesday, he told me. I saw him 2 days ago. And so that's where we are. Well, family, I'm excited to have as our first guest, and I'm not sure he's here because I think I may have clicked the wrong button, Mr. Andre Stevens. Andre, welcome to Reason with Rattigan. Are you there? He's not there. Well, let me bring on Herb Nelson in the meantime.
Good day. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear, Herb.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe the government want Andre to clear things with them too before he comes on this morning. Maybe it's a new tactic to stymie your investigative processes.
Right.
Things are not looking very good. And the minister, remember now, she's Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade.
Right.
And she is in control of all of these regional representatives, which shouldn't be. It should be that those regional representatives are representing us and that they're in fact doing everything they can to get our points of view across to the government. She should be listening to you intently and the rest of us to formulate a plan of action so that we can in fact start getting government business between the diaspora and the local government to be more effective. You know, there's nothing at all that I would rather see than a smooth sailing between us and the government of Jamaica. 60, I think it came out at about 60% of our remittances is what accounted for the GDP or something to that effect. I can't remember what the exact explanation was. But if you're being supported by the diaspora in such a fashion, you would think that they'd be openly, willingly wanting to speak to us and to find out what our desires are, and not try to control us through a series of people that they are in control of. Because obviously, these folks have to be following the government playbook and singing off that hymn sheet that the government gives them, not listening to the diaspora. And this is what is very, very alarming with the moves that they have made. You know, if and then guess what? It wouldn't surprise me, Will, if they turn around and made each of these people a senator to represent us in Parliament and said, this is our representative, without any vote. It would be a direct appointment, as they do now. So it's interesting to see how the new constitution will be proposed with regards to the senators, the appointments of senators, and the diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't know if you've heard anything as to how they plan to appoint senators, or do they plan to have a vote overseas?
Well, the problem with that is they haven't even decided on the powers of the president, because I'm sure you saw that
Yeah.
video where
Yeah.
the minister Marlene Malahoo Fort, where she was asked a very, very simple question: what will be the powers of the president of the Republic of Jamaica? And it was shameful. She couldn't answer. And that's, remember, they said they're doing it in 3 phases. And the first phase is to remove the monarchy and to replace the monarchy with a Republican form of government with a president. That's the very first phase. And they've had at least 6 or 7 meetings now. And you would think that that would have been sorted out already. And in fact, she said to the lady, if my memory serves me correctly, she said to the lady that that's a good question you've raised. We're going to probe into it and we'll come back to you. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on one second. This
I
must
know,
be a joke.
I saw that. She wasn't ready for that at all. And that was the part that was shocking.
But-
You know, her lack of preparation. And that's the most central question you have to decide on. Is it a power sharing arrangement, or is it a clear delineation of responsibilities between the president and the prime minister? All right. Is it a ceremonial position? Are they going to do like, I think it's Barbados decide to flip their governor general position over to what the president does? You don't shake the monarchy loose in that fashion. Seems to me like you're still wedded to the monarchy and you can't get rid of them. They're still in your system. We need to be much bolder than that, right? And to be honest with you, if the president is somebody who can keep ministers of government and the opposition honest, then they should give them that power. You know, they should give them the power to where that president can submit articles of impeachment if it comes down to that. Because we need somebody to help with a dramatic cleanup of what's going on down there. Yeah.
No, go ahead, please. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah. I was just wondering if when she came on, if she could not have anticipated from all the questions that were being asked of Dr. Our friend from CVM and others, she should have at least have some idea what the burning questions were. It's just a shock to me that she would be shocked.
Andre says he's trying to rejoin. I don't see him though. Andre,
Greetings, Mr. Rattigan. How are you?
I am fine, thank you. Fine, thank you. Welcome to Reason with Rattigan, sir.
Mhm.
Can you hear me loud and clear or no?
I'm hearing you. I'm actually here at a rehearsal, I'm treating the People's Rehearsal to be on this program as I committed to doing the program.
Okay.
So I
Well,
am doing this rehearsal, but I am here my friend and my brother.
okay. Thank
And
you.
more like I should say my father.
Okay. Well, let me just tell you that we extend a big, hearty welcome to you, and we're also appreciative of the fact that you've taken time out from your busy schedule to be with us today. You have a lot of people online here waiting to listen to you, what you have to say, and I hope that they will join the conversation. But first, let me start out by asking you this question. Who is Andre Stevens? And you can take as much time as you need to talk about who you are, because I think some people, some very few people, but they do count. Very few people don't know who you are. In fact, some of them called me today and they were asking, but they're not on social media. So if you would, could you please give us a primer on who you are?
Well, how would I say? Andre Stevens is a man who has a passion for Jamaica, a passion for people, a passion to serve, and that passion fuels everything I do. From I was once a restaurant, a designer, fashion consultant, a PR marketing expert. Many will say that I have a third eye for political dynamics. But I believe in social justice and advocacy. I have been built on that from high school. So, a former youth parliamentarian, a former president of the National Secondary Students Council. I've served on several different boards whilst as a youth advocate. But in truth and in fact, I don't believe in injustice. And when I see injustice, I'm going to speak out against it, cost it what it will. And I live by the mantra, get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I believe that each day should be a work in progress to be a better you.
Okay.
And I take that mantra in everywhere I go. And I'm very principled. Many will say, and yes, I'm a mental health advocate. So I do a lot in terms of advocacy for different communities, particularly the disadvantaged and minority communities. But my advocacy is not limited to this similar status quo opposing. So my advocacy sometimes is seen as too abrasive, too loud, but I still do my part because what is important is having impact. And I just keep Jamaica aware, make the average common Jamaican understand what is happening in the country and particularly in the diaspora, because a lot of members of the diaspora are totally unaware of the situations that are here. They possibly hear, oh, this is happening, but they don't understand the intricacies of what is taking place. So I give them that concept of basic understanding of the truth. So we give it unfiltered, we give it undiluted, so that them can know that this is what is happening and our country needs to be rescued. Do I believe in Jamaica? Yes, I believe in Jamaica. Am I going to be one of them to leave Jamaica? I don't see myself leaving Jamaica. I want to stand up and fight for a better Jamaica, cost it what it will. And as I said to you before some time ago, if it is in the process that I will have to die, remember that there are some heroes who had to die for their societies to be better. So I am at that space right now where I just want to see Jamaica better, because no one in Jamaica needs to be poor. Nobody in Jamaica needs to be in the situation that they're hunger and inability to deal with their medical expenses and care. is disadvantaged through them. I am equally annoyed by the little to no opportunities that many of our young people and Jamaicans are not given each day. And because of those inabilities to opportunities, what we find is that crime is up, the education system is in a crisis, our healthcare system is in a crisis. The issue, even the issue of agriculture and the economy is in a crisis because opportunities are not being created for all. So that is Andre Stevens in a vacuum.
Okay. Andre, if you could pick one issue in Jamaica that you said, this is my issue, at the expense of the others, what's that issue?
One issue. I need to name one issue.
Mm-hmm.
Could you repeat that, Mr. Rattigan?
Sure, certainly. I said, if all the issues you're working on, if you could pick one issue and say, this is the most important issue to me, at the expense of the others, what would that issue be?
The education crisis in our land.
Okay. Talk to us about that, because I'm sure my panel, they have some views as well about the education minister and the ministry and the state of affairs in Jamaica regarding education. But give us your view as to what's going on with the education system, the education ministry, the education plan in Jamaica.
You know, I'm going to take away for this discussion today the minister.
Okay.
Because education in itself needs a plan. It doesn't need a face. It needs a plan, a comprehensive plan. When I looked at a report recently that at a particular school in Kingston, the grade 7 cohort, 70% of the grade 7 cohort is unable to read above the grade 4 level. 70% of one school's grade 7 cohort is unable to read at the grade 4 level. That is called serious crisis in our land. And if we have that crisis in our land, it means that if you have one, I'm sure that we have across Jamaica 14 other of those high schools who are in a similar crisis. So that is already almost 10,000 students who are disadvantaged. When I look at our CXC results, and we're almost sending 40,000 students per year to the CXC, and the inability of we don't even have 10,000 or more passing 5 or more subjects per year. When I look at about the issue of, we are saying that enough persons are not around to fill the job market in terms of skilled labor force. However, we're not doing enough to identify the talents from early and target them into the various training institutions so that they can become skilled and competent even before the age of 16. So there is a problem in how education is done in this country. Therefore, it makes me question, have we analyzed the people or the children we are servicing? Have we sat down and said to ourselves, who are these children that needs to be serviced? Who are these children that needs attention? Who are these children that need special education? We are also equally saying that there is not enough resources being pumped into education. When you look at the education budget per year, of that said education budget, at least 60% of that education budget goes towards salary. And yet still, salary and remuneration still are inadequate to solve the cries of the teachers and the administrators in education. So if it is that one, we're grappling with the issue of salaries, we're grappling with the issues of resources, we're grappling with the issues of teaching crisis, because in many schools right now, there are teachers. There is a major gap of teacher population. In recent times, one school teacher reached out to me and said, Mr. Stevens, I have lost already 12 teachers. I have a deficit of 12 teachers in my school. And we have not seen September when there is going to be a significant deficit because of the low moral of teaching, the teaching morals in our country. So there is an issue of teacher crisis in our land. There's the issue of resources. We are not going around and pinning the schools to say, hey, world. We're not looking to Diaspora to say, Can this aspect of the diaspora, adopt these two schools to give them the additional resources? Because here is the truth. Many of the schools that are doing well in Jamaica are schools that have what? What do they have? They have past students association, because those past students associations can assist them in the extra ways to pump the resources, because the funds from government are not adequate enough for these schools to be maintained. The truth is, there's not even enough resources coming through the past program to see to it. Hello, are you hearing me, gentlemen?
Yes, yes, we're hearing you loud and clear.
So there are so many things that when you look at it, it makes you question, is education the priority for this country? Is it priority for successive governments? Secondly, I'm also looking at, I've listened to teachers at the basic school level that have been speaking to me. Mr. Stevens, the subvention or the subsidiary that we get from government each month is just $30,000. A basic school teacher is only getting $30,000.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? $30,000 is being spent by one minister of government in 5 minutes, or possibly any member or private sector, in just buying two little things, buying that, filling them gas tank, and go get a nice Hennessy or a Cabar, a nice little champagne, and then go party for the weekend, or even for about half hour. $30,000. Coupled with that, the early childhood education in Jamaica is in serious problem, because one, enough monitoring is not being done of the sector, because a lot of people just set up basic schools here, there, infant schools here, there, and they're not being monitored aggressively and adequately. So the cognitive years of the children's development in Jamaica, in my opinion, needs greater focus.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a lot happening, and people are concerned, because when you have an illiterate society, crime cannot be fixed. When you have an illiterate society, politicians and public officials can take advantage of that population. When you have an illiterate society, violence against women will never stop. When you have illiteracy in your society, they don't know how to spend a dollar, even if you give them that dollar. So with illiteracy comes financial illiteracy. So there are crippling concerns that I have for my country, because the education outlook is in a crisis.
Okay. Herb, you want to make a comment on that? Herb.
Unmute your mic, Sir Herb.
Okay, can you see me clearly?
Yeah, we can see you. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Andre, good afternoon. Herb Nelson. I'm with the Institute of Caribbean Studies here in Washington, and I've been a cohort of Wilfred Rattigan for quite I guess since the inception. I know I've received some mail from you as well, and that I'm looking forward to joining you as soon as some of my issues here resolve itself, which are family issues pretty much.
Herb, one quick thing. Just tilt the mic down a little bit so we can get you in full focus. Yeah. Keep your head up a bit.
Okay, you good?
No, up a little bit more.
All right.
Yeah, we're good right there. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, okay. Perfect. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Now, the education is possibly in the Caribbean, because Institute of Caribbean Studies looks at the Caribbean across the full length and breadth of the Caribbean. And education is the big key to getting our citizens from the poorhouse into the penthouse, right? It's one of the things that if you're unable to wiggle free from that aspect of society that envelops you, it surrounds you, it hugs you, but you have to get out and you have to get on top in order to bring your family members along with you, which is something I know well, because my mom pushed all of us, all 11 of us, to do well and to get out and to bring the other family members along, right? And this involved migration to the U.S. Now, not everybody is being allowed to migrate today, and I understand that. But at the same time, Jamaica has a lot of training programs, Heart Foundation, and other areas where they have introduced training. And of course, if you're bright enough and you're sharp enough, I'm wondering why somebody with your sharpness did not finish up at Mona, at the UWI or UTEC. Can you hear me? Andre?
I heard you, but put it this way.
Andre, stop 1 second. 1 second, Andre. For those of us listening on the radio, you need to switch over to the streaming side because we're not taking a commercial break for obvious reasons. So if you want to listen to us during the commercial break on the radio side, switch to the streaming side. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Andre. Go ahead, please, with your answer.
Like myself, Mr. Nelson, a lot of us face financial difficulties to complete studies, and this is a reality for many students who go to the university or universities or tertiary level institutions. But in doing that, the very moment that you possibly slip from being able to complete your studies and you go into the field and go into the world of work, you realize that possibly there is no need to finish the degree because what you are learning and what you have acquired is way more fast and vaster than what the university is teaching or putting in place. And I've always said that majority of the studies that are at, even for instance, the University of the West Indies, I believe they're outdated and they need to look at them. And they need to look at more attractive things that get people qualified. Content creation is a big thing now as a job in the global competitive space. But there's not a content creation degree being offered by any university in Jamaica. There's not anything on social entrepreneurship being a degree being done in the universities in Jamaica. Things like these that are modern day, things like these that make a lot of people way more interested in getting a degree, you have to see to it that those competitive advantages that make people interested, make them certified. So when I look and I see some of the skill sets that the universities are applying and want people to get certified in, nobody wants to do history and archaeology again. Nobody wants to do just normal banking. If you're going to do banking, make the banking be attractive with something else. So you have to think at all levels how you can let things be attractive. Because, for instance, I am going to go to university when I can spend an entire day on TikTok and I can make $1,500. Does that make any sense to you, Mr. Nelson? Because how Jamaican young people are socialized to survive is that they're socialized to survive to make a hustle, not to make a lifetime of wealth. And that is where also the education system has failed them. We have never cultured a spirit of excellence in Jamaica. And with that level of spirit of excellence not being fostered and cultured from birth, should mind them, let us get an education, let us get this, let us get that. We can't tell them to get an education when them look and see in the parliament that several people who are ministers of government don't even have a degree and they are ministers of government. Okay. So it is double standard. So you can't say to a society, go and get an education. But at the same time, when you look at the helm of who is leading this country, many of them don't even have a certification.
Okay, let me ask you this then. You were a youth parliamentarian. That was with the JLP, I assume?
No, the youth parliamentary program was non-partisan. So it is student leaders right across Jamaica who are selected through then the Ministry of Youth. They're pooled to have discussion on legislative processes and parliamentary debates on different issues that are affecting Jamaican young people. So it wasn't on partisan lines. But
Okay.
political parties would send their pool of young people to represent of the 63 pool of candidates.
I understand. Now, did you at that time interject into the thought process of MPs what you're advocating now, that they change the curriculum to meet the modern day standards for surviving
Well,
Jamaica?
the
Go ahead.
records would stipulate and the records would show that even in the Hansard, if you go back to the Hansard of my time speaking in youth parliament, I spoke about the education revolution, the
Okay.
need for a revolution in education, the need for modernizing education, the need for making education attractive more for our young men, and to keep young men aligned with prospective certification. For instance, we have now, they're saying, a labor force crisis where we can't meet that crisis. But we are also aware that our young men have become lazy. Our young men don't necessarily see the need to go and get a skill. But if you incentivize those projects at Heart Trust NTA to say that during the time you're at Heart Trust, you will be given a payment. You're paying them to come to school. You're paying them each week a 15,000 or that for 6 months to come to school. And out of that payment, you're going to put them through a national system where they become what? Paid by the government, but they're also working. For instance, you have the National Housing Trust building houses. For those houses, you're going to need carpenters. For those houses, you're going to need electricians. For those 20,000 houses, you're going to need all of those skilled laborers to get it done. So if it is that you're pumping the people to do the work, equally, you're going to put them under a national college so that they are with the human resource to get your housing infrastructures up, the human resource to get the road infrastructures up, the human resource to maintain the road infrastructure, the stoplight, the electricity problems, the roadways, the water crisis. So these people, even though you're saying you're training them, you're also putting them in a streamlined system where they are the resources to maintain and be the people to be there for the country.
Now, interestingly, you've got this new uh, industry booming in Guyana. And I recall 2, 3 years ago when Guyana had demand for oil field personnel, especially welders, over 4,000 welders. Guyana is 83,000 plus square miles, probably 20 times the size of Jamaica. And they have a population of less than 700,000, or right around 700,000. Was Jamaica prepared at any time in the last 2, 3 years to take a look at the boom in Guyana and the fact that Guyana's economy will move from 4 billion to about 80 billion in the coming years as far as their revenue stream? Has Jamaica ever thought of supplying the workers, preparing those workers, adjusting their school programs, vocational technical programs to meet that demand? Has there any thought given into that as a Caribbean island with enough population to help to?
In that case, a question like that you would have to pose to your Minister of Foreign Affairs, your Minister of Education, and equally the Prime Minister in terms of your labor resource plan. So I would not be the best person to answer that question, Mr. Nelson. I believe Mr. Rattigan and Mr. Tavares and Mr. Nelson, the person who would be best able to respond to such a question is the person who has the agenda of putting Jamaica on the pathway to prosperity.
Okay.
Not hearing you, Mr. Nelson.
Okay. Mr. Tavares, are you there? Mr. Tavares has stepped away. All right. Let me.
I
Where I am is
sorry.
raining. Just a second.
Hold on 1 second, Jeff. Andre, are you situated now?
Yeah, I'm where I am. It's the rain is heavy, but um, I am doing my best to listen.
Okay. Um, before Mr. Tavares asks his question, uh, one of the listeners sent this thing in. He said, "Who have you discussed your plan with, and who is listening to you? If anyone, who's listening to you, or are you just crying on deaf ears?"
It's not necessarily crying on deaf ears. It's a case that when you're on the cancel culture in Jamaica, they will listen to you, but they'll never acknowledge that what you're saying, there is actually merit to the argument.
Mm-hmm.
So, in truth, they are watching, they're listening to the suggestions, but it will never be a case where they will say, "Oh, I heard that on Andre Stevens show, and let us chime in to have a greater discussion." Because for them, the very moment you criticize government, you are telling a lie on government. And that is the kind of backward and wayward thinking where Jamaica can't be better. Because I'm of the view my greatest opponent should be able to make a suggestion or give me a critique, and I should be able to invite that person to the table. But successive administrations, political parties believe in this country that the moment you give an open criticism is a moment of an attack, and as such, those attacks are seen as not necessary, are seen as a way of saying, let us ostracize and alienate that name or that person because they are anti my agenda. So it's not a case that I think it's falling on deaf ear. It's a case that they see it and will listen to it and say if there's merit to the argument or possibly, or just basically be silent and just be totally in a space where they just ignore to the detriment of Jamaica.
Okay. Mr. Tavares, go ahead with the question, please.
Andre, good afternoon. Do you believe that the Minister of Education has a major role to play within when it comes down to our teachers? And have she done a good job in the sense of lobbying for teachers to get their salary in time? And have she done a good job being education minister of the country?
You see, this is the thing that I'm not going to take a discussion about if she is or she has not. Everybody knows that the present Minister of Education is a failure. However, there is a bigger argument than just teacher salaries. There's a deeper issue of the crisis in education that comes back down to resources. For instance, yes, Jamaica, the education ministry gets a significant pool of the budget. But in truth, successive governments have never truly invested heavily in education. Because if you take away teacher salaries from the education budget, there's really no budget. It is just an autopilot budget. So if you really want to fix education, it needs to be an interministerial committee that comes together and fix the crisis. Fable Williams alone can't do it. It needs a response, a national response from corporate Jamaica, from parents of Jamaica, from civil society, from the political arms of Jamaica. Jamaica is in a serious educational gap and crisis. Fable Williams, yeah, is failing, but her failure is because of the very fact that you don't have a committee or a commission that is holding education to the highest esteem.
All right. Um, Andre, let me switch gears on you a bit. Recently, the Prime Minister talked about Jamaicans not telling the truth on various platforms, including TikTok and I think he said YouTube. Uh, I don't want to assume anything, but it's safe to say that he's talking about some of us, maybe not all of us, but some of us. What's your opinion on that? And oh, by the way, let me just mention this to the folks that I don't have any prepared questions for Andre because it's just freestyle. I just want to get Andre's thoughts because he's on the ground, he's very involved, and I just want to let him speak so we can all listen and learn from him. So I'm not going to be taking up much of his time, kind of going back and forth. And for those of you who would like to debate Andre, this is not the forum for that. We should all listen to what he has to say because I think he has a tremendous message to deliver. And then once the message, has been delivered, then we can discuss, the pros and cons of it. But
Gentlemen,
but Andre,
sometimes
go ahead.
I have been around Andrew Holness too long to know how he is and how he thinks, how he operates, and I simply don't understand that this gentleman, whilst he was in opposition, when I sat at his table, ever so often complained about how mainstream media only carried a bit of information and never carried all. Hence, he invested heavily in his social media platforms. And record would have it that the Prime Minister in Jamaica has the largest following as a political representative in Jamaica, both on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. So therefore, the following is there. So I am not sure, I'm really a bit worried that the Prime Minister is caught up about the people who have less who have less followers, but yet still the message is coming across. So is it a case that the Prime Minister no longer has a storyteller to tell his story about how good and great his government is? Or is it a case that the Prime Minister no longer controls the narrative? And as such, because he no longer controls the narrative, he is becoming a bully. Because what I saw of him earlier this week was a bully who controls a system, but is not in control of the system. So therefore, he's complaining about the said system that built him. So I am a bit worried. And then I'm a bit worried that even on the day of World Press Freedom Day, Jamaica moved so high up in the Press Freedom Index from 12. We were at 7 in 2021. Then we moved to 12, and now we're now at 32. So I'm wondering, with those expressions being voiced recently, is it that the Prime Minister is concerned or has plans to censor the use of social media about the things that are spoken on social media? Or is it a plan for the Prime Minister to ban YouTube or ban TikTok? What is his plan? Because I know him well, and when he does soundings like that, I am sure it is very calculated and measured. So I am wondering if where he's going with this argument is that he's going to put the argument as he did when he wanted to demolish the houses in Clifton. His argument was that Dons were doing what? Building and giving illegal activities in Clifton. And then what did we see as the exact result of it? He went and he demolished the houses because he said that those illegal activities ought to be stopped. And then when the investigations were completed, it was one of the principals in the Prime Minister's constituency that turned out to have been selling those houses and lands. I am saying, will we now be seeing an equal and similar reaction that, oh, TikTokers and YouTubers are telling Lionel's government as such? Are we going to therefore be banning it as a result because lies must be muzzled? Or is it a case that he's going to start putting out a lot more defamation lawsuits and libelous lawsuits on people, Mr. Rattigan? So that statement within itself is way more than what it seems. I am sure he's very calculated from our time now. So I believe in a few weeks or couple months, there's going to be an equal reaction to that statement.
Okay. Herb. Herb.
In 2005, when the PM was a member of parliament for West Central St. Andrew, he was at the Ministry of Education. Am I correct?
2005, he wasn't at the Ministry of Education. He's the opposition spokesperson on education.
Okay, he was the opposition spoke. Okay.
Remember, the Jamaica Labour Party won government September 2007 under Bruce Golding.
Okay, and at that point, he was at the Ministry of Housing, correct?
No, he wasn't at the Ministry of Housing. He probably would have been the spokesperson on housing in 2005.
No. In 2007, when they won, wasn't he assigned?
He was at the Ministry of Education.
Okay, he was assigned to Ministry of Education. Was he ever at Ministry of Housing in charge of low-income housing projects?
I am not aware of that. And that time I was still in high school.
Okay, I got you. All right. So when did you actually get involved in the aspects of that the Ministry of Education and these housing programs were out of kilter, that they weren't being serving the people, and the Prime Minister himself?
What housing program are you talking about, Mr. Nelson?
Okay, you say you know the Prime Minister well. You say he has a social media following and a few other things. But what I'm trying to find out is...
No, I'm speaking about in relation to last year when there was the destruction of the houses in Clifton.
Right.
When he said in the parliament that we need to make law and order prevail. And as such, the illegal activities that were happening in Clifton, he said that dons were behind it. That was what I'm speaking about.
Okay, but did you know of programs that he actually was innovative about prior to last year? When did you take an active interest in what Prime Minister Holness, his portfolio and what he was doing with regards to education and regards to housing for poor people?
I'm not understanding where you're getting the housing. Mr. Rattigan, I'm not understanding this question about housing.
Okay,
Right.
the housing is, you talk about Clifton. Were you aware of any other programs he was involved with prior to the Clifton issue?
There was no other issue with regarding to the destruction of houses. So I'm not following your line
No,
of that.
not the destruction of housing, but in other words, what was he doing for poor people as far as providing low-cost housing for families?
He wouldn't have been responsible for providing low-cost housing. Remember, that's through the NHT. So you're asking what was he doing at the time as the Prime Minister? Well, he had the social housing program, which I'm sure you are aware that he goes to the 63 constituencies over the past year or two, and the aim is to provide 5 houses per constituency to the poor and the needy. So I'm aware of that. And I'm aware of recent times where he has used the NHT to have joined up partnerships for you to get housing options. So those are what I'm aware of.
May I? Mr. Nelson?
Yeah.
If my memory serves me correctly, the current Prime Minister was never part of the housing industry in Jamaica. He was always Minister of
Education.
Opposition Person and Education.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess I got some incorrect information that
All right. Let me ask, Andre, let me ask you this question. You have a large following. You're very, very influential. People love you to death. and you're very outspoken. You don't hold back. I mean, when you see, as you said before, when you see injustice, you call it out. Now, the next election will be held sometime between now and 2025, I believe. What role do you see yourself playing in the next election? Do you see yourself, will you offer yourself up as a candidate? Will you be a social commentator? Will you be demonstrating? What do you see your role as being for the next election, next general election?
The watchguard for Jamaica.
And what does that look like? What is it going to look like?
You will never, I don't think we have ever seen what it is like in Jamaica, but I'm going to be holding government to account. So I'm not going to ease up on any government. I'm going to be the defender for Jamaica and what is right and what is should be correct and what is moral and what is just. So I'm not going to be one of those persons who are going to take secret monies and private interest funds under any table and Jamaicans suffer. So if it means I have to call out people, even if it means that both political parties are equal the same, I'm going to call out both political parties for everything that is wrong. But if they equally do great, I'm going to say, Jamaica, here is something, here is that. So I'm just going to be the person who points Jamaicans to the truth.
Well, Andre, I tell you what, I sincerely hope that you're successful in that regard. But history tells us that politicians of both stripes, they really don't pay attention to people. Now, granted, there's never been a phenomenon like Andre Stevens in Jamaica, I don't think. So it remains to be seen how they will deal with that. But as far as the diaspora is concerned, actually, I shouldn't say the diaspora because I don't speak for the diaspora. As far as I'm concerned, what I've noticed is that the Jamaican government, they rely on the 7-day wonder. Story comes up, makes the news, and within a short period of time, it's dead. And what I've decided to do, along with a very small group of people in the diaspora, is to take them to court. As I said earlier, that people think that the government is only responsible every election year. And we tend to think not. We think that they're responsible every day of the election period, for the 5-year period, whatever the period is, 4 years, whenever they want to call the election. They're accountable, and they're accountable in court. So that's where we're taking it. We're taking it to court so that they're answerable to the Jamaican people in a Jamaican court. And hopefully, if we can find jurisdiction, also in courts outside Jamaica. So I say all of that to ask you this. How effective do you think you'll be in terms of calling them out and having them respond appropriately?
How effective, Mr. Rattigan? I believe, as Selassie said, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. I've made that step in bringing awareness to the people. For you to be able to have a platform that is so candid, so open about the issues of truth and governance, and down to the common man is able to understand what I'm saying, it's no longer just 9-day wonder. For instance, the Prime Minister demolished the houses in Clifton, and many people thought that, after 2 weeks it will not be spoken about. But the very fact that every time I call him Demolition Man, it resonates with the average Jamaican.
Okay.
So I remember my high school principal, Miss Claudia Neal, said to me, Andre, the essence of teaching is repetition. So the very moment that I spend 6 days, 3 hours each night, teaching a nation, subliminally, it's getting to them. And by getting to them, and by other persons like yourself, Mr. Nelson and Mr. Tavares, joining the discussion, more Jamaicans are getting in tuned with the issues of not just politics, but the issues of governance.
But I tell you what, you have a point there because there's a recent a cartoon that came out with him standing next to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, saying that lots of recommendations are coming in for her to be the next Secretary General of the Commonwealth, and that's one of the cartoons. It's a two-part cartoon, and the second one, there's a member of the press asking her about whether her filing, whether she filed or not. And it's interesting because the prime minister had like when you mentioned demolition man, he had like a hammer in his hand to signify that he's the demolition man. So I take it that you are making some inroads with the Jamaican public, or at least with the
So,
cartoonist.
so I'm telling you that it's me alone in terms of locally who is trying. A lot of you in the diaspora really pushing, and I appreciate the work that you guys do. Um, but this awareness that have spread over the past year, it has been dynamic because when I walk in the roads and I deliberately don't get a vehicle, I walk in the roads to be on the road to hear what the people are saying. And when I listen to the people, impact is being made. When I walk downtown in Coronation Market, and when I hear people say, "I want my partner draw," I like, "Oh yeah, beat him some more, teacher, beat him some more." I am sure I'm picking up on the ground. And surprisingly, many of the areas that I walk are people who are particular supporters of the government. And they are the ones who are equally saying to me, "Andre, beat him some more." So I'm saying to you that the impact is there, but for it to really have the greatest impact or the greater impact, we really need to have a coalition of not just the persons in the diaspora. I've said to, for instance, the Maroons, off record and on record, you need to form alliances to win this fight. I've said to the opposition, I've said to the UIC, you're all, the common denominator here is an oppressive government. The common denominator is an oppressive government. And everybody don't realize that if we don't take this government out, it's going to be to the detriment of Jamaica. But everybody is in their segments fighting. And it cannot fight on your own. It can't be an Andre Stevens fight. It can't be a PNP fight. It can't be a Maroon fight. It can't be a UIC fight. It has to be a fight to rescue Jamaica. So therefore, I say to people all the time, if you remember the Avengers, Jeffery, the Infinity War, the Avengers joined a coalition, to get rid of Thanos. And when I think about this Holness administration, he is like a Thanos on the backs of Jamaican people. Cruel, uncaring, has no compassion, has no heart, has no consideration for the poor, the vulnerable, the indigent, and the dispossessed. So I am very concerned about where my country is, but I am equally concerned about the many facets of Jamaica who, rather than they join the conversation, to join a coalition, it's a discussion board. Boy, Maroons are fight for them land. Yeah, Maroons are fight for them land, but equally fight for Jamaica too. Boy, PNP are fight for turn government. No, you can't just fight to turn government because the issue is not about you being government. The issue is about fixing governance in this country. And if we don't put in the right constitutional issues and fix them, we're going to equally have the same kind of corruption being bred because the PNP itself has had its fair share of corruption, cronyism, and nepotism in government. So how do we fix it? Are we going to say because that these people are very far that we're just going to find the lesser of the two evil? No. All or both have done their equal share of evil. We need to get rid of that evil. We need to have public accountability. Public accountability where citizens can drill public servants and get the answers. The Integrity Commission can't do it alone because they don't have any balls. They don't have any teeth. And if they don't have any teeth and they don't have any balls, come on, Mr. Rattigan. It is just for me, it is just paper soldiers. I believe in truth and in fact. The Integrity Commission has become just paper soldiers. Puppet on a string. And those puppet on a strings have no direct impact, can prosecute. Like, how can the Integrity Commission After how many years? Just looking into a report of nepotism in the prime minister, 14, 15 years after. So
No,
can you imagine what is happening now in this government where things have so many red tapes and blue tapes and black tapes? Can you imagine 10 years down the line when we start digging into COVID and start doing the true audit? Can you imagine what you would be digging up? Can you imagine the kind of friend and company business you would find out that this is happening? The Auditor General doesn't have enough powers to get in and to dissect into what is happening in this country. So if you can imagine that you found that out 14 years ago and the man is now uncontrolled, unstoppable, can you imagine? Should he be audited 10, 15 years, how many other things you would have gone unnoticed and unchecked?
well, Andre,
And that won't say,
hold on a second, Jeff. Andre, I'm glad you brought up a lot of things to unpack. You brought up the Integrity Commission's investigation of the Prime Minister, as well as the Constitutional Reform Committee's work, and you brought up some other things as well. But let me just say that as far as the Integrity Commission's work on the Prime Minister, or investigation of the Prime Minister, was conducted, that I'm being led, I can't say it's a gospel truth, but I believe it was Zara Burton who brought this to their attention. I brought this to everyone's attention back in 2017. The incidents occurred, you're right, about 14, 15 years ago, but they didn't get a hold of it as a formal complaint until 2017. But there's one thing I want to ask you before I have Mr. Tavares ask you his question. You mentioned about forming a coalition to deal with the issue of governance, good governance. How do you get the different, I don't want to use the word factions, but how do you get the different, the different people, the different organizations under one banner? Because it seems like some of us, we are so steeped in the idea that we are right, our issue is most righteous, or more righteous than any other issue, and so we want to discuss our issue at the expense of everybody else's issue. Question is, how do you, what do you have an idea as to how to get everyone under the same tent to deal with this issue of bad governance?
I believe it comes back down to, one, everybody identifying that Jamaica is unsettled. If everybody can first agree that Jamaica is unsettled and there are issues that have been affecting us years upon years from our independence, then people will now therefore agree that they need to sit down as big men and women and have that discussion. So, for instance, the issue of the Maroon Treaty is one that exists from 1738. Successive governments have acknowledged the Maroon Treaty, but this administration is having issues with the treaty. It simply means that a commission needs to look into, an independent commission needs to come and say, let us sit and have a discussion with the Maroons. Equally, the political representatives need to sit down and have a discussion about the way forward for Jamaica. Do we really need a republic system? Do we need to keep what presently exists? Or what is the way forward? But people need to come to the acknowledgement that Jamaica first isn't settled, and they're willing, Mr. Rattigan, to have that discussion on the way forward. But there is a problem, Mr. Rattigan. There are too many egos leading organization in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Too many egos. And I am saying, even if I have my ego, I can sometimes make a compromise in the interest of harmony and peace. Okay. And when I look at all that is happening, nobody is willing to make that compromise in the interest of Jamaica. Oh, I'm a First Nation. Oh, I can be government. Oh, I can be the people's next choice if the two political parties fail in this country. Nobody is willing, Jeffery Tavares, to put away those egos in the interest of an unsettled Jamaica. And that is my problem. When I look at the Maroons, too much ego. When I look at the government, too much ego. When I look at the opposition, too much ego. When I look at the UIC, too much ego. Yes, if everybody can pull away that ego, Mr. Tavares, Nelson, and Mr. Rattigan, Jamaica is ready to be fixed. The issue of the unsettled Jamaica starts with the issue of egos.
Okay.
You know, Andre, I sit and listen to you. And you have touched on so many vital points in your response to Wilfred Rattigan. And you touch on the thing of constitutional reform. Do you believe, as a Jamaican citizen, that a constitutional reform for a republic should have the people telling the politicians what they want in their constitution? For example, do you believe that the people of our country should be voting for a president, a senate, and not appointed a ceremonial situation that they're trying to throw down our throat?
Mr. Tavares, you put me in an uncomfortable spot because if I tell you the truth today, Jamaica might burn down.
Go ahead, man.
Mr. Tavares, the fundamental truth is we're going to the people in our country and asking them what do they want. But many of these people don't understand governance. Many of these people don't understand the importance of electing a president versus a ceremonial president. Many of them don't understand the system of recall, term limits, fixed election dates. Many of them don't understand impeachment. So when you're using all of these things, and this is why I come down to one, Mr. Tavares, the money is being spent on reforming a constitution. We should have been spending those monies in investing in education. The money, and let me say it again, the monies we're spending reforming a constitution, which will take a lot of millions, you could use those millions into billions to reform education. Mr. Tavares, you know that Jamaica can spend yearly, if the education budget is moved from 1 billion to 15 billion per year for 10 years. Can you imagine, Mr. Rattigan, the kind of revolution that Jamaica would have in terms of our education outlook?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm saying, gentlemen, can you imagine if we spend more time in education revolution, education reform, the said amount of energies that is being pumped around the island to get these people talking about constitutional reform? Imagine if we did that to educate and liberate the nation. And then 15 years come back to the people say, yes, we're ready to talk about constitutional reform. Jamaica is not ready for it because Jamaicans who must vote on this referendum are totally unaware. The referendum is going to be taking political lines.
You're so correct.
The referendum is going to be taking political lines. And if it's going to be taking political lines, Mr. Rattigan, can you imagine people voting on party lines for something that is going to affect them for another 60 years and for eternity?
All right.
But, Andre, let me ask you this before I let Wilfred come in. Is it that the powers maybe are saying bye-bye to a monarch because we grew up in an era where, you know, the slavery thing and the queen was in charge of Jamaica, or still in charge of Jamaica, now is the king, and you know, the whole slavery thing. I personally believe because they're calling for them to apologize for slavery. But my take on the whole of the thing, before we call for them to apologize for slavery, the two political parties need to apologize to the people of Jamaica for the atrocities that they have given to the people of this country. Your take on that?
And you know, it comes back down to what I call societal hypocrisy. The Jamaica Labour Party must apologize for the atrocities of Coral Gardens. And to the Rastafarian community. The People's National Party equally must apologize for what happened in the 70s with the state of emergencies that happened. There are so many things that, yeah, they need to apologize for. But in making those apologies, they equally to put a pathway for Jamaica to see how meaningful. I'm going to say this to you, Mr. Tavares. Is if this constitution is to be reformed, I believe that we should be able to have a coalition government where the best from the JLP and the best from the PNP forms the government, or even the UIC. I don't believe that it's necessary that you need to have the Minister of Education coming from the benches of the government when you have better persons who understand education from off the benches of opposition.
Mhm.
We must be able to disagree to agree in the interest of Jamaica. And I am not seeing that being talked about in any side of the aisle because hard political lines have taken over our country. Can you imagine
Yes,
how
sir.
beautiful it is? How beautiful Mr. Rattigan it could be that you, with all your years of experience, could be called upon in any government to become the security minister of Jamaica?
They wouldn't want that, Andre.
That's
Can
a
you
good one,
imagine?
but
That
Can
we're
that's
you
not no,
imagine?
no, we're not laughing. No, hold on, Andre. I am not laughing at what you said, you know. I just remember something that Wilfred told me before we came on the program. That's why I'm laughing. That's not nothing to do with you, my friend.
So I'm saying to you, when you take the bits and pieces, a lot of things are out there where people are saying, boy, wow. People want to see, I want to reimagine Jamaica in a different light. Can you imagine a Professor Canute Thompson as a Minister of Education who understands the importance of early childhood development
Andre,
and things like that?
1 second. Hold on 1 second. Let me see what this caller has to say. Hold on a second. Caller, go ahead. You're live on Reason with Rattigan. Hello?
Hello?
Oops.
Hello?
Turn on your volume. Turn on your volume.
Hello?
Yes, yes. Turn on your volume, caller.
Okay, okay. Are you hearing me now?
You're too loud. You're still too loud.
Oh, too loud. Probably I'm in the fun. I can't move here. Are you hearing me now?
No, you're too loud, caller. You're too loud. I tell you what. Adjust your volume and
Too
call.
loud?
Yeah, adjust your volume and call back. Adjust your volume and call back. Yeah, Andre, sorry about that.
So in truth, I believe the best of the best should be, because, for instance, I don't believe that MPs should necessarily be ministers of government. Because if you don't have the skill sets, why are you necessarily over supervising the ministry? For
Okay.
instance, Colonel Charles Jr. has no kind of acumen for agriculture. And when I see the disservice and injustice being done to agriculture under the auspices of Colonel Charles Jr., I am weeping for the farmers.
Well, Andre, I tell you what, you and I are both weeping for the farmers because I'm still waiting to hear what happened to the fertilizer that Morocco gifted to Jamaica in the amount of, was it, 2.6 million pounds, and we don't know where all the fertilizer went. So, I mean, the points you've made, they're very, very valid, and they're points that people, I think most people will agree with you. Let me throw this out to you though. You're saying that people are egotistical, and the political lines have been hardened, and so people, they're going to vote on this constitution along party lines, and that could be destructive for a number of years to come, not only for our generation, but future generations. The question is, do you can you think of any issues that both parties or Jamaicans in general can agree on going into this revolutionary idea of getting rid of this constitution, replacing the constitutional monarchy with a Republican style of government? And I say that with this example in mind: general access to our beaches. Andre?
Yes, sorry about that.
No worries. Did you hear the question, or would you like me to repeat it?
No, just rephrase it for me, please.
Right. I was asking because you said that it's a bunch of egos and people are going to vote, especially with the constitution, the referendum. People are going to vote along party lines, and that is not a good sign for the future. So the question I have to ask is, can you think of any issues that would galvanize people to agreement? For example, general access to beaches. I think that's one issue that could galvanize people, because whether you're PNP, UIC, JLP, or any other party, that everyone would agree that yes, we should have general access to our beaches. Why should the tourists? Why should they come to Jamaica and have access to the best beaches, and we don't? So, can you think of any issues that would people could rally around and agree on?
There are so many issues that people would rally around in this country. I think one of them that many would agree that they need to rally around is justice reform. How justice is served for the poor and not for the rich. Um, Many people are of the view that there are two justice systems or three justice systems. We need to speak on that in terms of constitutional reform. How, if a minister of government or a public official is found culpable of an act, they can be made an example of. But if a little youth does something, he's locked up for 2-3 months without a charge. So things like that to me is of great importance, where people would really rally around and agree to that it needs to be spoken about.
Has anyone on the committee reached out to you to ask your opinion on some of these issues that they're considering?
Remember, I'm on the blacklist of the government. No one in the committee will ever reach out to me.
Not even the PNP?
No, Mr. Rattigan. Remember, members of the PNP see me equally as a voice of dissent. So I don't see them necessarily asking, or if I invite them, the two members of the committee who I see the PNP has chosen, I've made several attempts to call them and they have never answered my number.
Oh, we have to do something about that. I happen to know both of them, and I can't think of any reason why they wouldn't respond to you. So we have to. I'll look into that, because I think that as a Jamaican citizen and as a voice for the particularly the poor people, for everyone but particularly the poor people, and for justice and equality, that whenever you reach
Mr.
out,
Rattigan,
go ahead.
you're having an all-island consultation, and I'm not tooting my horn. But who you have hosting the consultation, nobody knows them. They can't carry out the people to come and have the discussion frankly and honestly and candidly. So everything seems staged, and people see it for what it is. So people not going to really follow it up. A lot of people not talking about it, unless them sitting in the news, Mr. Rattigan. So this issue of constitutional reform, if you go in the inner cities and the communities, a lot of them don't know what is coming. Them just hear say one president to come to Jamaica.
Oh boy.
Retty, let me ask Andre
Go ahead, please.
some questions here. Andre, your initial, I guess, overtures on the internet that I saw told me that you were pretty close to the prime minister at one point. um, you could say things about the prime minister that none of us knew. And assuming that from 2007, when he was at Ministry of Education, and then he became the leader of the opposition in 2012, that's 5 years later. So he had 4 years in office. Um, and then we're looking at what happened with Minister Reid, and subsequently what has occurred with the permanent secretary, acting permanent secretary, Dr. Grace McLean, and the fact that over $124 million is missing from that ministry. Now, the Minister of Finance, Mr. Clark, went to Wilmer's High School and he briefed those students about the Jamaica's budget. Is he, and are any of you or your folks aware that it would be very simple to have cyber software set up so that not only does the Minister of Finance brief the children in high school and in college in Jamaica about the budget, but give them the ability to follow the budget, the sourcing of funds, the disbursement of funds, right? The spending of those funds, right? Are you fully aware that this would be an audit trail that they cannot get away from, they cannot get around? And this would also impact the ravages of corruption in Jamaica.
It could. It could really, but there's another issue. In the Minister of Finance doing his tour about speaking to schools about the budget,
Uh-huh.
have you realized the schools that are targeted?
So
Have you
Wilmer's
looked
is,
into the,
Wilmer's is targeted?
have you looked at the cadre of schools that are targeted?
No.
Well, when you look at the minister target of speaking on the budget, I'm not seeing none of those schools that are classified underdeveloped and failed school. See where I'm getting at, Mr. Rattigan?
Yes.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying.
So if it is that the least amongst us who don't understand how the budget works is not even being informed, you see how poverty and the cycle of poverty continues. So there is no targeted intervention for these schools who needs the information. They can't just be going to a Woolmans. What happened to a Vauxhall? What happened to a Trenchtown? What happened to a Tivoli and a Denhamtown High School? What happened to a Penwood High School? These are the children who equally need to be informed, because financial literacy is not being taught in schools the proper way. And that is why we're having this issue, whereby government officials do their wrongs and their corruption. And as you said, the audit trails, they know why they're doing it the way they're doing it. Because it is less easier for things to be traced.
All right. Andre, hold on 1 second. Caller, you're on the line. Reason with Rattigan. Go ahead.
Yes, Rattigan. I'm coming Jamaica.
Yes, sir.
Them have some no look. I call in pan some insurance scam where I go on with the legal insurance. Enter in an accident. Them say if you don't have a camera upon your vehicle, you cannot get no compensation. Hundreds of people have millions of dollars.
Hold on.
But them are do them the same.
Caller, let me stop you right there. Let me ask you. We have a guest, Mr. Andre Stevens. He's our special guest today, and we're talking about education. and some other things regarding the Constitution and good governance. Do you have a question for him or a statement regarding those issues?
How upon the wait name there?
I beg your pardon?
I don't know right now. The common man get a raw deal. We don't know. We can't sort out ourselves to come on a level. Cause everything right now we get beat down in every department where we and it come like nobody we don't have no voice.
No, but you have a voice, Mr. Andre Stevens, and then you have some other voices in the diaspora. I tell you
Yeah,
what.
might not. To me, the diaspora come like a them at the opposition right now.
Or okay. No, well, we have to. No, Mr. Stevens, I can't tell you. Hello.
Yes, sir.
No, I can't tell you that. Have you watched Mr. Stevens's program?
Yeah, I'm watching the program from time to time. I'm watching Mr. Stevenson. Mr. Stevenson?
Stevens.
No, I never really taken Mr. Stevenson yet.
All right, I'll tell you what. Let me call you after the program, and I'll give you some information as to how you can watch this program. Very, very informative, and it will be well worth your while.
No, I'm watching the program all the while, you know. Read Rattigan. Most of your program, I watch it.
Yeah, but you called me from Jamaica, am I correct?
Yeah, Jamaica, me I call from.
Right, but I'm telling you that there are other programs as well. Continue to watch my program, I appreciate it. But there are other programs, especially the Partner Draw program with Mr.
I want the Partner Draw. More time I scan the Partner Draw too.
Okay, all right. Well, continue to watch all the programs and continue to develop your ideas. And if you have a question for Mr. Stevens, you can ask it now. Otherwise, we'll reach out to you later on. All right?
Yeah, later on, because the
Okay.
thing I'm really our thousand of people affected by what me I tell about.
All right. Let me talk to you later on because let me talk to you later on because we have some more calls coming in. All right? We'll talk soon.
All right.
All right. Hello, caller.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. So you're on with Reason with Rattigan with our special guest, Mr. Andre Stevens, and we have Mr. Herb Nelson and Mr. Jeffery Tavares sitting on the panel. Do you have a statement or a question for Mr. Stevens?
I think I have a question and might follow up with a comment if you.
Sure, go ahead, please. The forum is yours.
Right, thank you very much. So, Mr. Stevens, I thought I heard once on your program that you had mentioned when you were with the GLP administration. I think you ran as a counselor in the Waterford area. That you had brought up the slogan of "Poor to Prosperity." My question to you on that is that just a slogan, or did you guys look at numbers and see where you could actually move up a lot of Jamaicans from poor to prosperity? Was that the case, or was it just a slogan?
Yes, he's asking a question. Go ahead, caller. He's talking about the slogan "Poor to Prosperity" that you coined it. Go ahead, caller. Finish up with the question.
Right. So yeah, my question is if it was just a slogan or they had done some analysis and see where they could transition a lot of people from poor to prosperity. And if that's the case where they had look at numbers and see where they could do that, why hasn't that worked? The other thing this is more like a comment, is you spoke about education before, and I think you were saying that 60% of the education budget is for teacher salary.
I'm not hearing.
The thing is that, if I may continue,
Andre, hold on. I'll take the question and I'll forward it to you. Go ahead. Yeah.
The thing is that when you look at the budget, and I stand corrected on this, the budget has about 30-some% for debt repayment, and I think wages are probably around 30-something percent as well. And then you have oil that we actually import. We don't produce oil like, say, Guyana. Right? So when you really look at the budget, there's not really much left back there. So my question is to Andre is, since the economy has gone into a service economy and we're more reliant on US dollars and we can't buy some of the stuff for education like books and stuff that we would import, and they don't produce those things in Jamaica, why hasn't the government embarked on a program to start producing more things so they can become less reliant on valued currency like US currency, Canadian and English sterling pound, versus just importing everything and becoming just more and more deeper reliant on US dollars?
All right.
Thank you.
No, before you go, refine the first question again for me. The one about the poverty to prosperity.
Right. So I heard him once on his program saying that he came up with the mantra or the slogan, poverty to prosperity. And I was wondering if it was just a slogan or they had looked at numbers and see where they could transition a lot of people, Jamaicans, from actual poor to prosperity. Because when I look at the stuff, I just see like the prime minister himself, he's the only one that basically moved from poor to prosperity. So was that a slogan, or you guys had looked at numbers and see that you could move a lot of people into that category?
Okay.
And if right, that's what I want him to answer.
All right, no
If
problem.
it was just a slogan.
All right. Thanks, caller. Much
All right,
appreciated.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Andre, can
What's the
you?
question?
Okay. It's a two-part question. One is, he said that he heard you on a broadcast saying that you were responsible, primarily or otherwise, for the slogan "Poverty to Prosperity," and he was wondering if you had looked at any numbers or data to suggest that that slogan would manifest itself in people moving from transitioning from poverty to prosperity. Let me just add a commentary on that. At the last JLP convention, the Prime Minister made a statement that the JLP is committed to moving people from the poor class to the middle class. He did not say how it was going to be done, but he said they're committed to doing it. That's the first, that's my commentary, and that's the first question. The second one is, and I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this, but I'll ask you anyways. It said that we're basically a service economy, and why hasn't the government moved along the lines of production, producing more things so we can become self-reliant?
Question?
I beg your pardon?
What's the second part of the question?
The second part of the question has to do with a service economy versus an economy that produces items where we can become more self-reliant, as opposed to depending on other countries, because it looks like we're more into tourism and things of that nature, where we don't actually produce anything. We're a service-oriented economy. How do we get to the point where we can actually start producing things?
So the first part of the question asked about if there was any data to suggest that people wanted to move from poverty to prosperity. Was that the question? I just want to be clear.
Yeah, hold on one second. The first part of the first question has to do with he said he heard you said that you coined the phrase poverty to prosperity, which was and is still being used by the JLP party. And he was wondering if any studies had been done, any data had been looked at to see whether or not it was just more than a slogan, that you could actually transition people from poverty to prosperity.
Well, one, at the time when the slogan had become a talked about slogan, I'm not an economist, but I study people, I observe people. And every Jamaican or most Jamaicans are in some form of hustle. But what we don't realize is that we have never, successive governments have never moved from hustling to enterprise. And I spoke about that, I think about 2 nights ago on my program, where we're not helping Jamaicans to build enterprise. I give them $20,000 today, Mr. Rattigan, and say to them, go buy up some stock. Rather than buy up the stock, Mr. Rattigan, and put a feasible plan in place to make it sustain, to grow, and to buy back and buy back and buy back, they just buy that stock and eat away that stock, and then them tell you come again. Why, boss, nothing not happen for me?
Mm-hmm.
You agree?
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, the issue of building enterprise, the training, the skill set is not a part of the culture of Jamaica. So, from moving people from poverty to prosperity, many people wanted to be better off. Many people want big house. Many people want big car. Many people want have them this and them that. But the point is, Many people are not willing to make the sacrifices, to put in the discipline, to put in the dedication and the hard work to reach there. But equally, government policies over time have not trickled down to make people move from poverty to prosperity. Because in the time when that slogan was crafted, we were looking solely at the middle class. How we can make a teacher on that meager salary be able to get a house, to be able to get a vehicle, and still be better off. Hence, why the 1.5 plan was crafted. Hence, we were thinking, oh, let us give teachers housing solutions. Let them be a part of the pool of priority housing solutions. Civil servants are part of the pool of priority housing solutions because you're moving them up the social ladder. But I don't know where it went wrong, where that plan, that strategy, that idea, that thought became swayed. Because right now, the amount of teachers who says their lives are better off, I never see or foresee this coming.
Okay.
I hope I've answered the question for, in terms of the service sector, Jamaica's service industry has not been capitalized on the right way, Yes, we're a service industry, Mr. Rattigan, but we can equally be we can be a multifaceted industry. We don't have to be linked solely to service. We can equally build technology. We can build and become industry driven. Because for truth, Mr. Rattigan, when you think about it, we have never taken agriculture the right way and agro-processing the right way, We have so many wasted foods on our island, and we're not capitalizing and using those foods to our advantage. Agro-processing is a big thing now because there's even research to say that frozen food is actually way healthier than fresh food. I've been looking at some research recently and I'm saying, wow, but we as a Jamaican, rather than say we go and build container houses, we should be building container agro-processing areas to be putting in the frozen items to be shipping them into other regions. But that is not being done. That is not being talked about because enterprises are not being built.
Well, let me ask you this before I bring the other panelists in. What do you say to a Grace Kennedy then? It's a Jamaican company. They're in the business of food processing. What do you say to them then when they go halfway around the world to get some of the products that they could? I think you know where I'm going to the question, so I'll let you answer.
Mr. Rattigan, I want to put me in trouble, Mr. Webber, further.
Oh, that's the gentleman.
Put it this way. I believe with their strategy to go around the world to outsource is because it doesn't exist in Jamaica. But for what exists here, I think they can do more. For instance, Mr. Rattigan, you know that Jamaicans have some of the best mangoes in the world, right?
Yes.
I don't see any company in Jamaica really pushing mango products that way, and they're agro-produced. You heard what I said to you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We have the best ginger in the world. But I'm not seeing us pushing a lot of ginger products. Turmeric is one of the greatest, healthiest things. And you seen Grace Kennedy or any of those companies projecting turmeric products. Sorrel is so good as an antioxidant and with all of the nutritional benefits. We're not seeing those things being promoted significantly from the Jamaican market into the different regions. Mr. Rattigan, there's so much here that is not being capitalized on. We have one of the best Scotch bonnet peppers in the world.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yet still, we're not growing Scotch bonnet in a way that is globally competitive.
Well, you know what? Before I turn it over to...
For instance...
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Let me go a little bit further, Mr.
Sure.
Rattigan.
Mm-hmm.
We have a food crisis right now on our island because of a drought. But you know, the food crisis never had to happen if you had a multiple layer of plan for each parish, which parish grows what, according to what soil apart, according to the year. You can't be having a glut in the market and then an oversupply in the market another time. So there should be always a sustainable food plan for the country. So everybody I grew up cabbage at the same time, Jeffrey. Everybody I grew up tomato at the same time. Everybody I grew sweet pepper at the same time. What kind of foolish plan is that?
I hear you.
My God,
I hear.
where there's no vision, the people shall perish.
So these are the things when me upset about. When me see a man who is a liar, who is very prim and polished and don't know about the two things of farming except the lands when father inherited in St. Thomas. I have been planet as one of the directors for the whole heap of lands in St. Thomas. I don't want you to start me up today because I need to God the people in rehearsal.
No, no man. We're not starting you up. This is typical Andre, who's speaking truth to power, who's
So,
educating the people.
Jeffrey, let me sure you understand where I come from that. Me really
Yes.
annoyed for no say. The brother has never one day lived the life. I've never seen him have a consultation with the farmers. We sit down and reason with them.
It's the
You
same
know,
way, Andre, if I may. It's the same way. And Mr. Rattigan. Nobody knows. Neither Andrew Holness, Darrell Vaz, Colonel Charles Jr. knew when the residents of Orange Hill in Westmoreland and in Negril planting ganja and the hand get dirty from the ganja. But what they do now is to put in place a license where the normal farmer who started the ganja industry in Jamaica cannot even afford to get the license.
hmm,
These are the things that we face in this country.
I don't want to start on the ganja thing today because I might not finish tonight. Because what I see happening, the injustices I've seen happening right now with the local ganja farmers. I have a friend who very close to me, and I told him the truth recently, and him just hung up the phone on me, Mr. Rattigan, and I don't hear from him about 2 weeks now. Because I look at him and I said to him, bro, the last time you inherited and invested in this thing, you lost $4 million because the government come and claim say you had the illegal ganja farming. And you come back now, that's not changed them now, they're nothing. And you start to talk back. Are you going to do, are you going to be losing another 4 million? The point is, my brothers, too many people in this country are doing ganja farming and just benefiting a few and not benefiting more. And I can understand how a former commissioner of police is one of the biggest ganja growers in this country. And he, whilst as commissioner of police, had some of the greatest farms in Jamaica being suppressed and burnt out. I don't understand it.
So,
Yeah.
Andre, in a case like that, what role is the corruption playing in hampering growth in industry in Jamaica? Is it that you have to pay somebody to get ahead? I mean, what do you need to do to be guaranteed success, especially in the ganja business?
Friend and company.
Hmm.
It's just friend and company. Friend and company, gentlemen. Friend and company. So it's going to be hard.
The other sad part, and I know we've left education behind, is that Dr. Grace McLean gets a lot of praise for looking out for the welfare of underserved communities and underserved schools. And by the same token, she, on her watch, is missing over $100 million. What has that $124 million hampered? What growth has it affected at the Ministry of
100 and,
Education?
$124 million honestly is chicken feed. You source that amount of money that is ministry
Well,
is
I
missing.
said her watch. I didn't say the Minister Reed or when Andrew was there as minister, right? So I was hoping that you could give us more insight as to whether or not your organization, you yourself, have looked at how much is really missing from that budget and how many
I have
schools that is it's hampering. Because let's
I have
face it,
not
if Tivoli Gardens only graduate 40 something percent, and the same thing for Denham Town, 40 something percent, right? How are those kids? Isn't it kind of hopeless when they look ahead and say, I should be graduating and I should be moving on to this other level? I mean, who's looking out for the welfare of those children?
mm, hmm. Who is looking out for those children?
Yes, I mean you have a Ministry of Education, but who in the ministry? Who's a
I'm
champion
going to
of
say this.
their cause?
I'm going to say this to you. You see, if you start auditing schools in this country,
Yeah.
some of the greatest scammers in our institutions are the principal and the bursars. You think fraud is at the Ministry of Education? You need to go in some of these high schools. Mr.
Like,
Rattigan,
give
you'll
me,
be surprised.
can you, and you probably will be reluctant to do this, but we have a bunch of investigators here in the diaspora that would be, we're just chomping at the bit to look at some of these things. Do you mind telling us, maybe not in public right now, but I'll talk to you later about naming some of those schools that we can start looking at them.
It's a lot. Trust me, it's not one or two, it's a lot.
Andre, let me ask you this, right? Because I'm listening to the picture you're painting of Jamaica, and it's it 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 sounds on one hand like you're saying if we do all of these things, then it's a hopeful Jamaica, but we're not, and therefore the situation appears to be hopeless. Now, the title of today's discussion is Jamaica, the State of Affairs. I'm going to ask you a big picture question. What is the state of affairs in Jamaica presently?
Uh, it's one filled with opportunities, but the opportunities are only for a few. But the opportunities do exist. Quite contrary, right? Opportunities are there, but it's only for a few. It's one that corruption is in every sector. So when you look in the hospital, you will say, "Oh, everything is okay," but when you really get in to find out, even the little cleaners stealing the little detergent and the bleach and the toilet tissues and every little thing. So what happened? Oh, wow! So corruption is spread from just the bottom to the top. So they say, "Oh, the government are thief," but when you look into the different sectors, the small facets of the society, down to them who is speaking, they're equally doing the same set of corruption. Probably not as big, you have big thief and little thief, but corruption is in every facet of Jamaica. So that is my concern. Um, when I look at resources is not everywhere that is accessible to all. For instance, when you look and you see that, hold a second, gentlemen.
Sure.
Yes, gentlemen, sorry about that.
Yeah.
So the very fact that opportunities and access to resources is a problem. When you go into our hospitals and there's no bed, there's no medication, there is no health professionals to service. When I look today at an incident in St. Anne's, where in Alexandria, um, two accident victims could not be carried because there were no human resource to drive the ambulance. These things are cause for concern. And then when you look, surgeries backed up on surgeries, people need access to surgeries. There are so many issues that just go. There's not enough resources in our schools. There is the issue of crime fighting. When you look at a policeman has to take a taxi to go to solve a crime situation, it is too much. It's overwhelming. It is a situation that Jamaicans need to demand more. But Jamaicans have become so annoyed and apathetic to the system and say, oh, I just what the system said. We don't call for a spirit of excellence anymore in our country. And because there's no level of spirit of excellence in Jamaica, it's like people say, oh, I just saw the culture stay. We just get used to it. So maybe we just move on. So we talk today, and then so therefore programs like ours, yeah, we're raising the standard of awareness. But that is why government is so annoyed by our programs, because we're in their faces. We're telling the people the truth each day, each night. And they're not appreciative of that because it is causing a social revolution. A revolution probably take another 20, 30 years. But I know that what I'm doing now, it will pay off probably another 10, 15, 20, 30 years. But the step has been taken, and that is what is most important.
Jeffrey, you have a question? Jeffrey is not there. Herb, you have another question? Herb, you have to unmute. Herb.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me now? Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Andre, I took the COVID 19 report from the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Labor, and I gave it to two CPAs to review. And just in an initial review, here's what they're saying to me. There are many troubling things we observe in our initial review. Whereas COVID caused many existences, the lack of organization and competence created a massive opportunity for theft. Millions are unaccounted for, and procured items totaling $22 million are unaccounted for. The Ministry of Labor's Social Security needs competent direction and contractual arrangements which were not documented. 52 million paid to various entities required a 2% holdback to be paid to the Tax Authority of Jamaica. It wasn't done. The spending process appears to be a step above a free-for-all. There's no crisis contingency plan at the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. And it says the wrong people are in charge and have no vision for the ministry or the future. Over 800 persons or entities did not have proper tax ID numbers. There's also an indication of phantom payrolls as things settled down because over 6 million in funds were uncollected. That means they got afraid and they stopped taking money at that stage because they realized that there could be exposure. It says this could be an indication that people got cold feet and ran. The massive failure is that with computers widely oh, you all right? With
Yes,
computers widely available, no effective payroll software existed to cross-verify people's tax ID numbers with the tax administration of Jamaica, and yet significant funds were being disbursed, right? 816 people or entities without a proper tax ID number was never qualified. So that is the COVID program from 2019 to 2021 or 22. Any comments on that?
Well, you see, where you don't have effective public accounts and accountability committee being held to the highest account,
Right.
these things are going to happen. However, in response to what happened in COVID, uh, I believe all of this spent could be because of a national panic. Oh, we don't know, so let us just spend and get things done. Let us spend and get the quarantine things up. So, in truth, yeah, many mistakes were made, but I believe it could be to the reason of. I'm not saying it is, but I need to look at this whole issue of the audit a little bit more. That when you look, it could be a situation that they're responding to a panic situation, but then they're recognizing, oh, this is an issue that, yes, this is corruption, but Mr. Nelson, it needs this question needs an entire program for itself for us to assess every aspect of the COVID spend. You can't just have a response to just this. It has to be. Let us look at day one when COVID came. Let us look at when the intervention started. What was intervention one? When we reached to intervention three, four, five, six. How the money started to be spent. How the response in terms of getting people quarantined to the hotels. So it is so much to this that needs to be done. Then when we started doing the response to the different groups, the elderly, the schools, the people who must get the $10,000 grants. So there is so much facets to this COVID spend that you can't just have a discussion about, oh, is it mere corruption or is it there is so, Mr. Rattigan, I'm hoping you understand where I'm getting at.
I
So
am.
it is so complex that it is the confusion makes you have to assess every situation uniquely.
Well, surprisingly, the same Minister of Health came on our program and spoke with us. And in turn, he said to us the last time he was on that spent $2.5 billion and they expected to spend about $5 billion. 2 weeks later, here comes the announcement from him and the Prime Minister that now they needed $14.1 billion that they already spent the $5 billion. They needed $14.1 billion more to take care of Cornwall Regional Hospital. So,
It comes down to significant project overruns, and this is happening in successive governments where project overruns are not dealt with properly because you don't have what is called project management in government. National projects like the restructuring of Cornwall Regional Hospital should be sat at a national discussion in Parliament. So you should have a committee that is overseeing that. It
right.
shouldn't be just done to the Ministry of Health to be doing it. All national projects from infrastructure, from roads to water to building of infrastructure from schools, hospitals, etc., should have a national commission or a committee that is overseeing every dollar being spent. And that committee should be meeting very regularly to see to it that these project overruns are not continuing. Because if a project committee was set up, they would have known it's better you should build a hospital from scratch rather than you say you're going to do what? Put in or refurbish the hospital. Because what is already being used to build the hospital or refurbish the hospital is basically half. And I am sure that by another 2-3 years, it will reach the amount that is expected for a new hospital to be built. Because the assessment had been done to say you need at least 30 billion to build a new hospital. And they have reached, with refurbishing and restructuring a hospital, almost 15 billion. And the project is yet to be completed. Can you imagine when the project is really and truly finished, what it will be? 21 billion? 25 billion? So then it would then put it that we made a wrong judgment and did not put the things in place to see to it that we do what was right then, which was the first recommendation: build a new hospital.
That's an
Ain't a project overruns because there is no oversight.
that's an interesting point, Andra, and I'll tell you why. When we had the minister on, he said, when asked the question as to why the overruns, the cost overruns, he said that the mistake. Oh, and if he had any regrets about what had taken place, he said one of the regrets was that they had selected builders in Jamaica to refurbish the hospital. But the problem is that they're expert at building apartment buildings, not hospitals. And so that's where a lot of the money went down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of the money went down in this hole. But if you
Mm-hmm.
look, and he said that after that they had some people come in
Yeah.
from overseas, including some members of the
Mr.
diaspora.
Rattigan, sorry to disturb. I'm not hearing you at all. There's a started in the background, and it's coming from Andrew or what?
Yeah, that's not from my end.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm in a noisy space and I have taken. Oh Lord, sorry. Yes, I'm hearing you.
yes, Andre. I was saying that the Minister of Health and Wellness said that
Andre, mute your mic, Andre.
Sorry.
no worries. Okay, Andre, I was saying that the Minister of Health and Wellness, he appeared on one of our programs, and he said that the reason, the primary reason for the cost overruns was that they had selected builders in Jamaica to look at the problem at the Cornwall Regional Hospital, and the mistake was that these people are good at building apartment buildings. They're not good at refurbishing or building hospitals. So they went out and they got consultants and builders from overseas, including some members of the diaspora, and that they were trying to rectify the problem. Once they started looking at it, the problem was far worse than originally thought. And so they were too far into the project in terms of, well, do we demolish the thing and start from scratch, or do we just go ahead and just finish what we started? So I think that's where they are right now. They're trying to finish what they started, and it's just costing not millions but billions and billions of dollars, and still can't be, and still not completed yet. So there are many issues to discuss concerning just this one just expenditures on this one building. There are many issues.
Yes, but if you look, did you remember where the Jamaica Labour Party under Bruce Golding were doing the major infrastructures of road development under JDIP when Mike Henry was Minister of Transport, and there were significant project overruns of the roadways. I think you need to go back into the history of project overruns in this government. Under this government, there was JDIP, and there were calls about how JDIP. There's so many other issues. You can go and look at, go into the Education Trust, the National Education Trust, where all of those monies are for the investment that should have been in education through the Education Trust. There is so much things that you could point out. Hence, why I am calling for a national commission to look on national projects. Because once it is for instance, the Prime Minister recently spoke about the investment in the water project in the Pedro Plains or something in St. Elizabeth. Those projects shouldn't just be coming under the auspices of the Prime Minister. It should have an oversight and monitoring committee. Because far too long, Jamaica has been having these big, fancy projects, but the significant project overruns could do 2 or 3 times. For instance, what is happening in St. Thomas and Portland now with the building of the roads, as was highlighted, there was one contractor who was China Harbour, and then the agreement was, let us cut up the contract. And that contract being now cut up has caused significant project overruns of that project. That project is from 2015, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That project of Portland Road and St. Thomas Road is from 2015. And see there now, roads are still not finished. And the residents in Portland and St. Thomas are equally upset about what is happening in the system. So there's so much.
If I may, Andre, the same way the Junction Road, they had a contractor doing the Junction Road that cost billions of dollars. Now that this ban the whole Junction Road thing, say they can't do certain things, they just ban it. So billions has went down the drain, and nobody says anything about it.
True.
You know,
We're faced with a problem. Pardon me?
No, go ahead, please.
We're faced with a problem in this country where we need to stand up and ask for a proper accountability. What happened to the Junction Road? And most of these ministries come under the Prime Minister's portfolio. Why? Why?
And that is why I said, so many people say, Andre, why you beat the opposition so much? It's because they're the only one who can ask for it, because they sit in the House and can ask the questions that many people would want the answers to. The office of the Prime Minister has too many critical portfolios under it, who makes it very, very, very questionable how things are done. For instance, we spoke about the whole beach thing. The UDC is a major call for concern. Have you ever looked at who is the attorney in the UDC? Who the attorney is to the Prime Minister? These are things that makes me question. If you look in certain things of who is a legal luminary in the UDC and the kind of ties, you know, me shut me mouth.
No, man, no, do it now. We're almost finished the program. Continue, please.
Yeah, but if you look at it, you will say, wow, what is the correlation of X and Y and Y? There are things that are questionable, very questionable. And people would say, oh, they're not looking into it. But the acquisition of beaches and access to beaches, the attorney in the UDC is very skilled, like the Prime Minister. Very skilled.
And that is why they signed away 34 or 33 acres of beachfront land to China Harbor, all in the interest of building highway in this country. And we sit down in this country as Jamaicans and allow this government to continue selling us bit by bit. The question must ask the Andronis government and even the PNP, how much have they sold the people of Jamaica for? To the Chinese government and to their friends and cronies? How much have they sold us for? Are we going to sit down in this country and continue the way how we continue?
You know,
Chopping black dog for monkey?
I am sure one day in history, I will be asking or will be sitting in the nation's parliament, probably not as a member of parliament, but going in and asking the questions to do a special audit into the Holiness administration from 2016 to when he left. And I am sure some major revelations will be made.
Of course, one of the things that we've talked about, and when we get the foundation off the ground, we'll be looking at is where did the donor funds coming in from donor agencies and donor countries, where did those funds go? Where are they? Because we don't think that there was proper oversight, and so some of that money is siphoned off. Let me ask, Andre, think about this. You said that, you intimated that, look, the PNP is sitting in the government and they can ask the questions. Some of the questions that we're asking and we're struggling with to come up with answers. I know you've spoken to some of them. Why is it? Can you give us any indication as to why is it that we don't hear more from them in the parliament concerning queries about these issues?
Can I respectfully say, gentlemen, I don't want to give my response to that because I'm oftentimes told that I am what they would say, Jeffrey. I have something against the leadership of the PNP, which I honestly don't. But I am annoyed in which the way of things are being done. But I will leave. I'm just asking, can I be
Yes.
given the privilege
No
to
problem.
answer that
No
question
problem.
today?
No problem.
In the interest of just satisfying my peace.
No problem.
Because I don't
Listen,
want to
Andre, said, we'll satisfy your peace. No, you don't have to go any further.
take,
Let-
and I have taken equally a decision myself and my team not to promote anything further in the opposition, good or bad.
okay.
Because when my platform speaks about them, it is still PR.
Okay.
So,
No, but hold on there, Andre. Sorry, Mr. Rattigan, to be butting in like that. But if we don't speak, they are paid by the taxpayers of this country,
yes,
And
that
Mark
is
Jefferson Golding is paid by the taxpayers of this country.
Yeah, but
So if
Andre,
we don't speak to them and say to them, enough of what you're going on, they must speak of what is going on in the parliament.
yeah, but what
They
Andre,
can't sit down.
what Andre is saying is that he's not paid by the government, and so there are reasons why he would refrain from asking the
I
question.
understand, yeah.
And respectfully,
Jeffrey,
will
put it in this perspective. A platform as mine speaks to average on a live 8,000 people per night, right?
Mm-hmm.
8,000 times possibly 2 people or 3 people watching during that period, Mr. Rattigan. So the platform can influence up to 30,000 people per night. And that is like 2 political parties gather the base at arena 2 times, one at stadium and one at arena. And I am
One in half retreat.
And one in half retreat. So 3 different crowd that me I talk to every night. And an opposition can't see the effectiveness of such a platform. How then should I be speaking about them, Mr. Tavares? Therefore, I have made the decision in the interest of, because one of my marketing persons says, Andre, there's too much free advertisements and too much free is being given to them, good or bad. So the less I speak about them, they'll understand the impact we have.
let me ask
So
you
you
before.
can do it.
Let me ask you a question
You
before. Yeah.
You can do it, Jeffrey. You can do it, Mr. Rattigan. But
Okay.
I'm not going to talk anymore for them. Because if I speak, I think you understand where I'm coming from.
I do.
Yes, I
Speak
do.
about the injustices and speak about all the wrongs in this country. But I will equally not speak about the PNP.
That's fine. No problem. Much appreciated and well understood.
The-
Listen.
one last question I have for you, which I think you have had faith in the past in the PM, and I want to ask you about the Integrity Commission refusing to prosecute him because they say too much time had passed in one of the corruption where he sent contracts to a fellow by the name of Robert Garvin. I think that's the particular instance where they failed to prosecute. It is still an open case. And is there anything that you could do in rallying your listeners, your folks, to make demands on the DPP or even the PNP to provide qualified attorneys to prosecute him in that instance?
You know,
Because
I'm going to say this to you. You see, what the Prime Minister did,
yeah,
well, is not unique to him doing. You see, all 63 members of Parliament,
yeah,
you check their history. If you check their history,
or not say all, but most who sit in the parliament. You see what happened with the prime minister doing with Garvey is similar to several members of parliament in Jamaica. So if we're going to prosecute one Mr. Rattigan, let us aim to go and prosecute the many. And I'm sure there are other reports by the Integrity Commission that has not been released as yet about the high levels of nepotism by other MPs, both in government and opposition.
Let me add a piece to that. The Integrity Commission, the corruption prosecutor, said that she didn't have enough evidence to proceed with, I believe, 2 charges. But she had enough evidence for the 3rd charge. However, the term she used for declining to prosecute was abuse of process. And I haven't gotten a clear answer as to what does that phrase mean. I've gotten some indication that it means an inordinate delay in the investigation. But remember now, there is no statute of limitations against corruption in Jamaica. So the idea of the passage of time causing her not to prosecute, I have a problem with that. If she had said, well, on paper it looks like we have a case, but we can't find the witnesses, or witnesses won't testify, the memories have faded, documents have disappeared, and so on and so forth, that would be another case. I'm trying to get that report. I have the first report. The report calling for the prosecution. But I haven't gotten the second report. I'm in the process of getting the second report so I can look at it and see what exactly took place. But also, the idea that lots of them are doing it, that's true. Over the years, I would agree with you, even without the empirical evidence, that at least anecdotally, lots of them are doing it. But here's where I draw the line. When you catch somebody, right? If you don't have the evidence, it's one thing. But when you catch somebody, you're supposed to prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. It's similar to 3
But
people.
remember, the Integrity Commission said there was a report that says that 8 other members of parliament should be charged, or prosecuted, Remember that report?
I haven't seen that report. I've heard about it, but I haven't seen it.
So, and because of this, the limitations that the Integrity Commission has, they can't even publish that report.
What kind of limitations are you referring to?
Remember, they're talking about some gag orders and something of that sort,
Yeah,
So that is why.
the gag order, because they have to table the report first. That's what happened. They can't talk about it. They have to table the report, and then once it's tabled, yeah, go ahead.
So we have to wait on that, which I am sure that you'll be surprised at some of the names that comes up in that report.
Well, we'll wait for that report. But here's the argument I'm trying to make, and that argument is, if you and I, Andre, if we're speeding down the road, we're drag racing, and you're doing 100 miles an hour, and I'm doing 90 miles an hour, 95, and the police, they stop me, it is of no moment for me to say to them, well, you stopped me, but Andre was going faster. He broke the law too. Why don't you arrest him? Because the question that will be asked of me is, did you break the law? And my answer is going to be yes. And that's the end of the story. So you're right. There are lots of people out there that we can go after. But in this particular case, we have the corruptions prosecutor saying that she has enough evidence to prosecute this man, but that she's declining. Well, she has declined to prosecute him because of abuse of process. And nobody seems to be able to decipher what exactly does that term mean, abuse of process. People have speculated that it's time, the action is time barred, but there is no bar against bringing an action for corruption in Jamaica. So I have to see this report for myself and read through it to see exactly the reason she furnished for not, or reason she furnished for declining to prosecute him. Look, we're it's 5:53 and we're almost out of time. I'll just do one go around. Herb, do you have a quick question you want to ask him?
Well, the point is this. If he could give us uh, an outline of his organization to say what part of the organization you have, Andre, that goes after corruption, what part goes after the various events in education and in agriculture that you're talking about, so that maybe our listeners and ourselves we know where we can support you. Is that possible?
Well, I have my YouTube platform, my Facebook, my TikTok, and definitely Instagram. On YouTube, my platform is called I am Andre Stevens, and I'm tuning to do my live nightly, except on a Saturday. So from 8 p.m. or sometimes until 12, because Mr. Rattigan, when he comes, I go up to 12 because of Mr.
Sometime 1 o'clock
Rattigan.
too.
Yes. Um, on TikTok, I have to grow the presence because the Gen X, that's the platforms they use and
Right.
generation. And so I am on TikTok. They don't really love the politics, but I bring the politics in a particular way with national commentaries with a little laughter here and there. So they will eventually warm up. So I'm growing a presence on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Facebook was really the platform that I used mostly until I was told how YouTube is very good in terms of monetization, etc. So I'm on Facebook as well. So I use all the platforms to my advantage, just as how Andrew Holness used it to become Prime Minister in 2016. I'm using it equal to the advantage so that Jamaicans can be aware of the power of their voice.
Okay. Jeffrey, please. We just have a few minutes remaining.
I just want to say thanks to Andre, although it's not my program, for coming on and tell us who Andre Stevens is and his dedication to our beloved island Jamaica. We will continue to fight for the poor people in our country, and we never stop fighting for them. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
It's a my friend.
Listen, for everyone, don't forget, tune in tonight at midnight and listen to, well, Relax with the Rebel. It's on this platform, this radio station, and we're going to be playing some really, really nice slow jams tonight. Andre, I want to thank you, but before you go, uh, we've seen Andre we've seen Andre the social commentator. We've seen Andre the vanguard for the people. We've seen Andre the fitness. I don't want to say fitness guru, but we've seen Andre training. We've seen Andre now acting. What else is there for Andre to do? What should we expect next from Andre?
Just look out. Just look out.
Look in or
Probably
look out?
just keep looking. You never know what form I will take.
Well, what do you have
But I'm
planned then?
sure
What do you have planned?
I have, you see, I go according to how the universe sends me. So
Okay.
I'm very liquid. So as I am now, I am just observing, waiting, and seeing. But as we speak, it's more a case of just doing what is needed, and that is just being the people's voice at this time.
Well, sir, let me tell you this. It's been a pleasure having you on, and it's a pleasure having a conversation with you. I think this is the third time we've spoken, and I learn a hell of a lot
Sure.
every time.
And there's the need for having more of these discussions as we develop the call for a better Jamaica.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's for a pleasure. Thanks all, and remember to tune in and to follow the platforms. Be blessed now,
All,
and good evening.
all right. Take care of
Same
yourself.
to you,
Be
sir.
well, my
Yeah.
friend.
Blessings to you, Andre. Appreciate
Blessings
Thanks
the
to
a
you
lot, sir.
also,
conversation.
Mr. Nelson and Mr. Tavares.
Same to you, sir. God go.
All right, folks. So that's it for today. We had some serious, some significant problems with our system, and I got a message from the radio station. I think next week we'll be doing something different, and I'll advertise that a few days before next week's broadcast. But I'm looking at the comments, and yeah, people enjoy the conversation, but they're struggling to listen to the conversation on both the radio and the live stream. So I think we're at a point now where we're going to have to make a decision. No, I'm at a point where we will make a decision, and the radio station has made a decision already. But we're gonna find it, and also advertise it to the people. Again, folks, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. And don't forget, tonight, we don't have any issues at the nighttime program. So, tune in tonight for some sweet, sweet, sweet slow jams. Until next week, I remain your host, the rebel, Wilfred Rattigan. Thank you. And thanks, my distinguished panel. I'll see you guys later.
All right. Take care now.
All right, take care now. Bye-bye.
All right, Jeff.
Honesty.